All right, so welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at all this newsletter growth advice that's out there. You know, all this advice that promises like massive subscriber lists like overnight. And we've got a ton of different sources for this deep dive, articles, expert opinions, even some like personal anecdotes. And let's just say there are some pretty spicy takes.
Yeah, it's actually fascinating how much of the advice, it like completely contradicts itself. You'll have one expert who says like lead magnets are the best thing ever, and then another one who's like they're totally dead. Or like paid ads are the holy grail. For sure they become like a total money pit. It's enough to make anyone's head spin trying to figure all this stuff out.
Especially if you're just starting out, right? Like you're bombarded with all this conflicting information, and it's really tough to know what's going to actually work for you. So to help us sift through all of this, we've got someone with us who really gets this world. We've got Chenell Basilio with us today. She's the creator of the Growth in Reverse newsletter and podcast.
Hey there, thanks for having me.
So Chenell, let's start with, I guess, this myth that seems to be making the rounds lately, that lead magnets are dead. You actually disagree with that.
I definitely disagree with that. Lead magnets are totally not dead. But the key is that they have to be super focused on your ideal subscriber's needs and directly tied to what your newsletter offers. Like you wouldn't offer someone a vegan recipe book if they love to eat steak.
Right.
It's all about offering something irresistible, but to the right people.
That makes total sense. Justin Moore, who writes a newsletter for creators, he found that like a general finance checklist that he made, it was a total flop. But when he offered a lead magnet with detailed sponsorship data, his audience went nuts for it.
Exactly. It's like he totally understood his audience and he knew they were looking for that specific information. So like if you're a food blogger, for example, maybe your lead magnet could be like a collection of your top recipes, or like a business coach might offer a mini course on goal setting. It's really all about offering a taste of the value your newsletter has, but tailoring it to that specific niche.
So for anyone listening right now, what kind of lead magnet would make your ideal subscriber immediately hit that subscribe button? Like what would be that irresistible offer? That solves their biggest problem.
Okay, so here's a piece of advice that might seem a little counterintuitive. Standard double opt-in. It can actually sabotage your growth.
What, really?
Yeah, we're talking about that extra step where people have to confirm their subscription by clicking on a link in an email.
Okay, yeah. But isn't that supposed to be like best practice? Like why is that a bad thing?
So here's the catch. Studies actually show that double opt-in can lose you like 20 to 40% of your potential subscribers.
Wow, that's huge.
It is. So think about it. You get all excited, you sign up for a newsletter, but then like life gets in the way, right? That confirmation email gets buried in your inbox and you just totally forget about it.
So you're stuck in like what you call double opt-in purgatory.
Exactly. But luckily there's a solution. You can create your own double opt-in in your welcome sequence.
Okay.
So instead of relying on that generic confirmation email from your email provider, you send a series of like personalized emails that welcome your new subscribers, remind them what they signed up for, and gently nudge them to confirm.
So that way you're not just throwing them to the wolves, basically. You're actually building that connection with them right from the beginning.
Exactly. And it gives you more control over the entire subscriber experience. You also get better data on how people are interacting with your welcome content. But one important thing to note, always check any local regulations. Some countries, like Germany, for example, they have very strict rules about double opt-in that you need to be aware of.
Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about something that makes a lot of creators really nervous. Sponsorships. Is it true that adding ads to your newsletter will scare away your subscribers?
That's definitely a common fear, but it usually comes from people misunderstanding what sponsorship actually is. It's not about like plastering your newsletter with random banner ads. It's about finding brands that align with your values and offer products or services that your audience would genuinely like.
Yeah, like Josh Spector, who's built this really successful newsletter for creators. He found that most of his subscribers were actually fine with sponsorships. Some were even excited to see them.
Right. If you're really transparent about your sponsors and you choose them carefully, it can really feel like a natural part of your content and not like this annoying interruption.
So instead of being scared of sponsorships, maybe we should think about them as an opportunity to connect our audience with stuff they'll actually like, while also supporting our work.
Definitely. And even if you don't feel ready for like full-blown sponsorships, starting small with affiliate links to products that you personally use and love is a great way to dip your toes into the monetization pool.
I love that. Build those relationships slowly and gain that trust gradually. Okay, let's talk about the big one. Paid growth. Now, this is where I tend to get a little controversial. I really think that most new newsletters should avoid paid ads entirely. What do you think?
I totally agree with you. Paid growth really only makes sense if you know the value of your subscribers and you have a solid monetization plan in place. You need to know how much you can spend to acquire a subscriber, and you need a way to actually earn that money back.
So before you even think about using paid ads, make sure you've nailed down who your audience is and what they want. You've optimized all your landing pages, and you have an awesome welcome experience that's going to nurture those new subscribers.
Right. Otherwise, you're just throwing money away. You're attracting people who might not even be the right fit, and then they're just going to leave because they're not getting what they were expecting.
Now, there are some exceptions to this. If you already have a massive audience, or an unlimited budget, or maybe you're already well known in your field.
Then paid ads might be worth exploring. But for most new newsletters, focusing on organic growth is going to be much better. It's about building something sustainable, not chasing vanity metrics.
Okay, and speaking of growth strategies, let's talk about referral programs. Remember like a few years ago when everyone was going crazy over those morning brew mugs?
Oh, yeah. Referral programs were like the hottest thing.
They're huge.
But things have changed a lot since then.
They definitely have. I think modern referral programs need to be way strategic and less focused on just giving away random stuff. Think about what your audience actually wants and offer rewards that are easy to get, they scale well, and they actually relate to your newsletter content.
Like the Dink, for example. It's a newsletter for parents, and they do this really well. They offer these exclusive products that their audience loves, but you can only get them through referrals.
I like that. So instead of making someone refer like 10 friends to get a mug, maybe they just have to refer 1 or 2 people to get a bonus piece of content or early access to a new feature.
Right, something more attainable and related to their interests.
Okay, so let's talk about something that I know makes a lot of creators anxious. Cleaning their email list. It feels like this brutal thing to do, like purging your list of people. But maybe there's a gentler way to do it.
I think so. It really makes me sad when I see creators bragging about cutting their list in half without even trying to re-engage those inactive subscribers.
Yeah, it's like deleting someone's phone number just because they haven't called you in a while, like you haven't even checked to see how they're doing.
Exactly. And you might actually be surprised by who you're losing. Some people use those services that hide tracking pixels, so they might be opening every single email. But you'd have no idea. You could be deleting your most loyal readers.
Wow, that's scary. So what's a better way to do it?
Well, instead of immediately deleting people, try some gentler approaches first. Send an automated re-engagement sequence with some of your best content. Maybe pause their emails for a bit, or offer them options beyond just stay or unsubscribe.
Yeah, give people a reason to reconnect instead of just assuming they're gone forever.
Like the Gist newsletter does this really cool thing. They focus on sports news, and during the off season, they segment their sports fans instead of unsubscribing them.
That's smart, because even the most diehard football fans probably don't want to read about football in April.
Exactly.
But come September, they'll be back.
It's all about understanding that engagement is going to ebb and flow, like life happens.
You know, I have to admit, I used to think that giveaways were a total waste of time. I figured they just attracted people who wanted free stuff, who would disappear as soon as the giveaway was over.
Yeah, I get that. You don't want to attract people who aren't actually interested in what you have to say.
Right. But then I had this experience that completely changed my mind.
Oh, what happened?
No, I decided to run my own giveaway.
Okay.
And I partnered with some other creators in a similar niche, and we offered a $500 cash prize.
Wow. So this wasn't like a free ebook or anything.
No, this was something pretty substantial, and it totally worked. We all got a ton of new subscribers. But here's the crazy part. Over half of those people are still subscribed to my newsletter. Like 20 months later.
Seriously, that's amazing.
I know. They're still opening my emails, they're clicking on my links, they're genuinely engaged with my content. It really made me rethink my whole stance on giveaways.
It sounds like this giveaway was so successful because you were collaborating with other creators who were in a similar niche, so the audience was already interested in that type of content.
Exactly. It wasn't just some random prize. It was something they actually cared about. Which just goes to show that even a strategy that seems kind of low quality can be incredibly effective if you do it right and it aligns with your audience's interests.
It all comes back to knowing your audience and being strategic about what you do, and it shows why it's so important to experiment and try new things, even the ones you might be a little skeptical about at first.
You never know what might work until you try it. Okay, so ready to dive into another potentially controversial topic. Should you be sending people to your website from your newsletter? Or should you keep everything self-contained within the email itself?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's something a lot of creators struggle with. I get asked that question a lot, actually, because my own newsletter mostly sends people back to my website.
And you've seen a lot of success with that approach. But there are definitely valid arguments on both sides.
Oh, for sure. For me, it came down to the few key things. My articles tend to be pretty long, like 3,000 or 4,000 words sometimes, and nobody wants to scroll through an email that's that long.
Right. And wouldn't a lot of email clients just cut those longer emails off anyway?
Yeah, they do. So putting the full articles on my website makes for a much better reading experience. People can bookmark them, share them, save them for later.
And it's better for SEO too, right? Having all that content on your website gives you a chance to rank in search results and attract new readers who haven't even heard of your newsletter yet.
SEO is huge, but then on the other hand, keeping everything within the email can make it a lot easier for their subscribers.
Oh, yeah.
They don't have to click away to a different website. They can read everything right there in their inbox.
I know some people really like that. I've actually gone back and forth on this myself over the years. When I first started out, I didn't have a website. So I was sending people to my Medium articles.
Yeah, that's pretty common. It's a good way to test things out and start building an audience without having to invest in a website right away.
But eventually, I just felt like I needed my own space online, so I built a website. And now I just include a little teaser in my emails with a link to the full article on my site.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to finding what feels right for you, your content, and your audience. There's no one-size-fits-all answer here. It's all about experimenting and seeing what your readers respond to best.
All right, let's talk about another topic that I know is a big one. Paid newsletters. Should you put your newsletter behind a paywall or keep it free?
That's the question, isn't it? It's something that a lot of creators debate. I've actually considered it myself, but ultimately I decided against it, at least for now.
What made you decide not to do it?
For me, I think it just came down to the feeling that it would put me in a box creatively. I didn't want to feel pressure to constantly create content that was worth paying for, even when I wasn't really feeling inspired.
I get that. It's like it shifts the dynamic from passion to obligation.
Exactly. And I know a lot of creators who are doing amazingly well with paid newsletters. Like Lenny's newsletter is a perfect example. But I think it's important to be realistic. You're not going to be an overnight success like Lenny. It takes a long time and a lot of consistency to build the kind of trust and authority that makes people actually want to pay for your content. And you have to be able to consistently deliver amazing value that justifies them paying for a subscription. That's a huge commitment.
And when you put up a paywall, you're also limiting how many people can see your content.
Right. It's a trade-off for sure. You gain a more committed audience who are willing to pay for your work, but you're also making it harder for other people to find you, who might benefit from your insights.
You know what I thought was interesting? Lenny's newsletter actually started offering one free email per month, but they still have paid tiers for more frequent content and extra perks.
Yeah, that's a really smart approach. It's a good way to balance accessibility with monetization. They also have a special tier for businesses who can expense their subscriptions, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's not really an all or nothing thing. Like it doesn't have to be just paid or free. There are all these different possibilities and creative ways to structure your newsletter.
Exactly. It's about finding what works best for you, your audience, your content, and your goals. Like if you're an expert in a really specific field and you're providing really in-depth analysis or advice that people would be willing to pay for, then a paid newsletter might make sense. But if you're just starting out and you're still building your audience, focusing on a free model might be the better way to go.
Okay, let's do a quick round on some other newsletter growth tactics. So first up, subject lines. Should you bother A/B testing them?
You know, I've seen very mixed results with that. Sometimes I'll test two different subject lines, and there's a clear difference in open rates, but most of the time, it's only like a 1 or 2% difference, which honestly doesn't seem worth the effort.
Yeah, I agree. I think it could be helpful to test like specific wording or phrasing to see what resonates best with your audience.
Yeah, but testing completely different subject lines, where there's no clear variable you're tracking, feels kind of pointless to me.
Right. It's like, are you really learning anything from that data? I'd much rather see people A/B testing their welcome emails because those can have a much bigger impact on how engaged people are.
Oh, for sure. Those first few emails are so important. You're setting the tone for your whole relationship with your subscribers. You really want to make a good first impression.
Okay, next up, paid recommendation widgets. Are they worth using, like for either growth or monetization?
Ooh, that's a tough one. It seems like everyone has a strong opinion on those, and they're usually on opposite sides.
Yeah, it's like this huge divide in the newsletter world. You're either for them or against them.
Exactly. I've experimented with them a bit, but honestly, I found the whole thing pretty frustrating.
Yeah. especially when it comes to monetization.
Yes, the requirements for actually getting paid for recommending other newsletters are ridiculous. Like, a subscriber has to open every single email from that other newsletter for like a year before you earn a few bucks.
Yeah, and they have all these weird location restrictions too, like the subscriber has to be from a specific country.
Yeah, it's just not worth it to me. I'd rather spend my time creating awesome content and connecting with my audience authentically.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I much prefer doing reciprocal recommendations with other creators that I know and trust.
Yeah, I like that.
It feels more genuine, and I know I'm recommending quality stuff to my audience.
It's all about building real relationships, not chasing numbers.
Now I can see how paid recommendations would be tempting for growth. It could be a really quick way to get a lot of new subscribers without spending a ton of money.
True. But the real question is, are those subscribers actually engaging with your content? Are they the right fit for your newsletter?
Exactly.
And then there's the argument that you're basically sending your own subscribers to someone else's list.
Yeah, it's like you're spending all this time building a community, and then you're encouraging them to go somewhere else.
It's a tricky balance.
It is, but I guess it comes down to your goals and what feels right for you and your audience. If you just want a quick boost in subscribers, then paid recommendations could be a decent option. But if you're trying to build a long-term engaged community, there might be better ways to do it. Okay, last one for this rapid-fire round. Giveaways, legitimate growth strategy, or just a way to attract a bunch of freebie seekers?
You know, to be honest, I used to be totally against giveaways. I'd heard way too many stories about them leading to a ton of new subscribers who then immediately unsubscribe.
Yeah, I used to think that too, but then I ran my own giveaway and it completely changed my mind.
Really? What happened?
Well, remember that $500 cash giveaway I mentioned earlier? The one I did with some other creators?
Yeah, the one where people were surprisingly engaged.
Yeah. So over half of the subscribers I got from that giveaway are still reading my newsletter 20 months later.
That's amazing. What do you think made such a big difference?
Well, I think it worked because we partnered with creators in a similar niche. So the audience was already interested in that type of content. It wasn't just a random prize. It was something they actually cared about.
Yeah, that makes sense. Those subscribers were already primed to enjoy your content. They weren't just looking for free stuff.
Exactly. It really made me rethink my whole stance on giveaways. Sometimes a strategy that seems like it's low quality can be incredibly effective if you do it in a way that makes sense for your audience.
It always comes back to knowing your audience and being strategic.
So true.
This is why it's so important to experiment and try different things, even if you're not sure if they'll work.
You never know what hidden gems you might find. It's so easy to get caught up in the shoulds and should-nots of the newsletter world, but sometimes the best discoveries come from throwing out the rulebook altogether.
That's the beauty of experimentation. You never really know what's going to resonate with your audience until you try it.
And that brings us back to our earlier conversation about context being king. What works for one newsletter might be a total flop for another.
Exactly. It's all about understanding your unique audience, your content, and your goals, and being willing to adapt and evolve as those things change over time.
Speaking of evolution, there's one final thought I want to leave you with today. We've talked about lead magnets, double opt-ins, paid ads, sponsorships, all those tactical things. But what if the real key to building a thriving newsletter isn't about any of that?
Ooh, I love it when we get philosophical. Lay it on me.
What if it's about cultivating something deeper? Something that goes beyond the latest trends and hacks? Something that truly sets you apart in that crowded inbox space?
You're talking about forging a connection with your audience that goes beyond just delivering information.
Exactly. It's about fostering a sense of community shared values and genuine human connection.
It's about being authentic, vulnerable, and relatable, sharing your unique perspective and voice, even when it feels a little scary.
Because in a world that's becoming increasingly dominated by automation and algorithms, that human element is what really stands out.
It's what makes people feel seen, heard, and understood. And ultimately, it's what keeps them coming back for more.
So for you listening, I encourage you to step back from the tactics for a moment and ask yourself, what is it about your newsletter that makes it special? What unique value do you bring to your audience?
What makes you and your content is replaceable.
Because that's what truly matters in the long run, building something that has a real impact and resonates with people on a deeper level.
Well said. That's a mission worth pursuing.
And on that note, it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Huge thanks to Chenell Basilio for joining us today and sharing such incredible insights.
Thanks so much for having me. This is a lot of fun.
And to you listening, we hope you found this deep dive valuable and inspiring. Remember to keep experimenting, keep learning, and keep building something that truly matters. We'll catch you next time on the Deep Dive.